Welcome. Today, we're very, very lucky to have a special program on Robert F. Kennedy and the Jews. And we have a representative from the Kennedy campaign, Glenn Tamir, who's, I believe, the Berkshire's coordinator for Kennedy for president, and also Liz Wagner, who we've had before. And is active in the Jewish community here in the Tampa Bay area. And we're going to try and answer some questions about Robert F. Kennedy and the Jews. Will he be good for the Jews? Will he be good for Israel? Will Jews be able to vote for him with a clean conscience, thinking it's going to bring about a better world? And for that, I guess let's start by having Liz ask her questions that she might have about Kennedy, and then Glenn can answer them.
Okay, but you know what? First, I'd like to say before I'm asking any specific questions, I really want to just say that I am looking at Kennedy as someone who I hope gets on the ballot, because I think I can't vote for Biden. I don't want to vote for Trump. And I want there to be an alternative. And Kennedy looks like he may be that alternative. And I think that if the Jewish community were to get behind Kennedy, or I'm saying I think the Jewish community maybe should get behind Kennedy, because Biden is just betraying us. Okay, and I believe the Jewish community needs to take action, not just talk, not just do everything behind the scenes, and maybe we can, talk our way into a good position with Biden. No, you can't. And taking action might mean, for instance, getting behind Kennedy and saying, we're leading in this direction. We think Biden has not earned our votes, and we need to try for this alternative. So.
Mm-hmm. And before you ask your question, I just want to say that I'm not, an official spokesperson for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm a volunteer with the campaign. I'm spending my time supporting him because I believe, for many reasons, including the one we're here to discuss today, that he's the best candidate for the Jews and for Israel. And I'm using my experience of having listened to him, even having spoken with him, working with him on specific projects related to Israel. But it's purely, my thoughts and my words. I'm not a official spokesperson for the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You do have you've met Kennedy, or at least talked to him on the phone
Yes.
about these issues.
Oh yeah. Again, I'm working with him. This will come out in our conversation. I'm working with him specifically on the issue of Israel. Oops, sorry. Specifically on the issue of Israel, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in Boston last week. And I'm I'm in communication with him specifically on the issue of Israel, and that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting him.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. So you're not speaking officially, but you're knowledgeable about what he thinks. So that's
Yes,
good to know.
I am.
Okay. All right. So you can answer Liz's
Absolutely.
questions as a Jewish activist.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the first question is, what made you decide to work for Kennedy? You're volunteering for him, and was it specifically Jewish issues that brought him to your attention, or his other issues?
Yeah, no, it wasn't the Jewish issues or the Israel issue at all that brought me to him. I didn't learn about that until after spending some time listening to him and learning more about him. More of an issue of like yourself, feeling the need for an alternative. I believe very strongly in a lot of the issues that are important to him, the health and wellness of this country, the issues of free speech. There are a number of other issues that brought me to him. And like yourself, I've been an independent since about 2010, registered independent, and I vote for the person based on the person and the policies. I try very hard to maintain that perspective. So that was the reason why I got in touch with the campaign and have become involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah, when we were talking before we started, I mentioned that when I moved down to Florida 9 years ago, before that, I had all my life registered as a Democrat. But when I moved down here to Florida, I registered as an independent, and I'm still registered as an independent. One of the things that started to pique my interest with Kennedy was his talk about all the captured agencies and his really wanting to deal with those problems. And that's a big thing for me, I have to say. And I'm looking at him as an alternative also now, because I'm learning more about his positions on Israel.
No, that's a good point. And
I wonder if we're being sabotaged.
well, getting back to what Larry had said before, his reasoning for not supporting Trump this time around. Trump had, I believe, and I think I align with Larry on this. He had great intentions, but what did he do? He brought in people like Gottlieb and Bolton. He brought literal swamp creatures into the swamp that and his purpose was to eliminate the swamp and to destroy it. And he brings in people that are literally part of that swamp. And that's a very good point about, the agencies. And that's one of the reasons why I think he has such good experience for being president. I believe he's a natural born leader, and he's presidential. He's he's got those qualities, but he also has an incredible understanding of how those agencies function, what's wrong with them. And he's a political wonk like I've never met before. He understands the mechanisms to deal with that. So I believe the notion that one has to have specific political experience in order to be successful in politics, I think it belies the meaning of what the founders thought of in the first place. The idea was go to Washington or wherever, get involved in politics, and then go back to your job as doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, whatever it is.
Right.
Not to have what we have today, which are career politicians who are there for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Larry, go ahead.
Well, maybe we should start talking about the Jewish issues in this
Sure.
campaign. I was speaking before we started that many American Jews I've talked to are wedded to voting for Biden. They may be critical about the policy of supporting Hamas, but they just feel the Democratic Party is their home, and Biden is a Democratic president, and they're going to stick with him through thick or thin, no matter what happens. What does Kennedy offer that Biden does not to American Jews?
What I would say is he offers stability. I watch, this isn't a plug for I-24, but I happen to get a lot of my news from Israel on I-24. I watch it religiously, no pun intended. And I remember after October 7th happened and Biden went to Israel and gave Bibi that big hug, the talking heads, the reporters, everybody on I-24 was, oh my God, Biden, he's the best friend of Israel. He's so supportive. Look at this wonderful support. And you know, I wrote to them immediately and I said, just wait until the political winds blow. That's how you can determine how deep a keel is and how steady someone stays the course. If they shift because of politics, then you'll know really what's in their heart and soul about a subject. And I said, just wait. It's
Noticed publicly, he is keeping a low profile, which I mean, I think it's probably smart to let other people spew whatever they're going to spew about the conflict. And, you know, he's focusing on getting himself on the ballot. So for him to get into the trenches in arguments, crazy arguments that people are having over Israel right now, is probably smart, if, you know, for him to hold off for a while. But it does encourage me to hear that I know JNS did an article, an interview with him. Maybe it was a little while after that whole ridiculous flap about the statement he made at a what was supposed to be a private event about the COVID vaccines. And there was a whole big flap about that because he mentioned
yeah.
a study. You know, he
Mhm.
mentioned a study that had made this claim about Ashkenazi Jews, whatever. I'm not even going to get into it because it was so stupid.
No. It's
Wait, wait, wait,
I
wait.
think it's important. I think it's important that you to get into it because
Yeah,
that's the way he is. He
yeah,
gets into the details, and he was merely he was talking about a specific study that
yes,
showed that certain ethnicities, including Ashkenazi Jews, Asians, there were a couple, have a lower resistance to the virus. But that's a fact that he was merely stating. What
yes,
they did was they used that as a method of claiming that he's anti-Semitic.
yes, yes. And you know, and then, you know, if you're thinking critically, it was easy to see that that's what happened, but it got twisted, like so many things get twisted these days in the news. And but then I believe it was following that JNS did an interview with him, and he made some very strong statements along the lines of what you just read in that interview, and that was encouraging for me. That was, you know, another reason for me to think, wow, maybe Kennedy would be a good alternative.
Sure. I mean, I don't think that he has been hiding at all. I've listened to a number of podcasts where he has very specifically defended Israel. The one with Patrick Ben-David, for example. Um, he was interviewed by Riz Khan, who's a reporter for Al Arabiya. There are a number of podcasts where he very much defends Israel, talks specifically about the situation, talks about what he would have done on October 8th had he been president. So
Oh,
I don't
I
believe,
missed those. Yeah,
yeah, they're out there. It takes quite a bit of effort and work to find them because they're not always presented. Certainly, they're not leading on CNN with those kinds of stories.
right.
Um, but they are out there, and yeah, happy to share them
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, I'd like to hear them.
Yeah.
So
Um,
Liz, I
go
just have a
ahead.
question. Do you have any questions about, a lot of people say a vote for Kennedy is a wasted vote, or he's a spoiler, or whatever. Do you feel that that is a factor in the Jewish community not being more interested in his campaign? I mean, what do you think is the problem?
I'm, this is just my own personal thing. I don't have any statistics or anything uh, to rely on. But that's what most people worry about with third party candidates. They worry that their vote is wasted, but I don't think the Jewish community should be worrying about this. Uh, I don't think it is a wasted vote uh, to vote if Kennedy can get on the ballot. I don't think it's a wasted vote. I think the Jewish community is being attacked from both sides, and we need to take a stand for ourselves and let the chips fall where they may. But the Jewish community, a lot of the problems plaguing the Jewish community now have arisen because the Jewish community remained in a kind of state of paralysis, not really doing anything very much to try and uh, change to try and change the trajectory that we're on. We've just been, steadily sliding down while people supposedly who were our allies have been organizing against us. And now it's all out in the open. But these things, the anti-Jewish politics, it's been going on for decades. But the Jewish community, in a lot of ways, was so attached to being a part of the progressive wing, of being on the left. It, it just found ways to rationalize everything and pretend we weren't facing increasing danger. But now you can't get away from it. And now that it's all exploding, then I don't, I don't, I don't think you should waste your vote on someone like Biden, for instance, who's clearly not um, in our corner. He's not. I mean, all he wants, he's willing to talk about um, how he'll fight anti-Semitism, but meanwhile, he's actually um, working in some ways to protect Hamas. That's the biggest source of anti-Semitism on the planet right now. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, and he's not doing anything uh, to fight that. He is finding ways to accommodate all that. And that is dangerous for the Jews. And it is time for American Jews, as the second largest population of Jews on the planet outside Israel, we need to act. We need to do something. We need to lead, not just spend our time trying to be the most perfect allies to people who have made it clear they don't want us to be their allies anymore. I mean, it's time to do something, to act, and take the
Mhm.
blinders off.
Larry, you make a really good point, and I think it's important that people don't waste their vote, or consider voting for a spoiler, as you put it. And you know, the spoiler in this case is clearly Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And while I don't know if Liz, if you watched the presentation Kennedy made along with his campaign manager from Brooklyn about a week ago, but there was a recent Zogby poll, which was the most authoritative poll done to date of the campaign for a number of reasons. The average poll that's done, the ones that we see on TV all the time, the New York Times, Siena polls, and things like that, they contain about 2 to 3,000 individuals that are polled, and they're done on a national basis purely on as a popular poll. What percentage? Well, Zogby did a poll of almost 27,000 people, which gave it a margin of error of 0.6%. And he based the poll on electoral college results, which is, after all, how the president is elected. We know that candidates can win the popular vote and lose the electoral college vote. It's happened several times recently. So, and he did 3 separate polls. It cost about $500,000 to do. And what he asked 3 questions, or 3 polls. One was Biden versus Trump, just the 2 of them. The other was Biden versus Kennedy, the 2 of them, and then Kennedy versus Trump. And what it showed was fascinating. When all 3 of them are in there, or rather, when it was Biden versus Kennedy, Kennedy beat Biden in a landslide, an electoral college landslide, just the 2 of them side by side. When it was Kennedy versus Trump, Kennedy beat Trump by only by 2 electoral college votes, but that's what it showed. And when all three of them were involved, I'm trying to remember what that showed. I should know that, but
I think it showed Trump winning
by
like 2
I don't.
votes or something.
Did it show Trump winning? I'm not sure. I should know the answer to that, but
I think so. But
because I
very
don't.
close.
But what it showed was that if no, I think it showed that Kennedy was
Kennedy won all 3.
won in that
Kennedy won all
3-way as
3?
well.
I only
But
saw the short version.
the important thing that it demonstrated is that
But very close.
in none of those examples could Biden win. And the definition of a spoiler is someone who cannot win, but if he runs in the race, would prevent the other person who could win from winning. And so that's why Kennedy issued this, what he called a spoiler pledge to Biden, that they would do another poll like this in October between Biden and another poll just like this, and whichever candidate it showed, whether it's Biden or Kennedy, whichever candidate had the least support, that person would agree to pull out of the race to support the other candidate to ensure that Trump doesn't win.
Wow.
So it's what this poll clearly showed is that when people say, I don't want to vote for Kennedy because he's a spoiler, that is factually inaccurate.
Yeah.
So what Kennedy's saying in October, he'll drop out if he's behind Biden in Poland?
Well, if Biden agrees to the pledge, that's exactly what the pledge stated. Yes, he said, we will both sign the pledge now. We'll do the poll again in October. And if that poll whoever that poll shows as having less support, that person would agree to back out of the race and give their support to the other candidate, so that Trump does not win.
But
so
if Biden doesn't sign that pledge,
well, then there's no pledge. Then there's no agreement. If like in any agreement, if both sides don't sign, there's no agreement.
So Kennedy won't drop out unless Biden agrees to the pledge.
Right. Well, Kennedy is not going to drop out any other way than that. I suppose he's committed now because he made the pledge that if that occurs, he would back out. He made that commitment. But he's already on the ballot in 12 states officially. And there are a number of other states that he will be on the ballot shortly. I mean, he will be on the ballot in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And part of the reason why it's taking this long is because of the restrictions that are imposed from each state in terms of their requirements of getting on the ballot. I think it was 26 states had the requirement that the candidate needed to announce his vice president in order to begin balloting in the first place. And so Kennedy didn't do that until about a month ago when he announced Nicole Shanahan as his vice president. And certain states like New York, for example, only provide you with a 6-week window and a minimum of 45,000 signatures that you need to get. Other states have different rules. But the point is, the reason why he's not on the ballot in many more states is because he technically could not get on the ballot because of these state restrictions.
Let me raise another scenario now that you mentioned this pledge, which I never heard of before. The Perot phenomenon. Ross Perot was running for president, and he dropped out of the race in the middle, and then he came back.
Mhm.
And many people said if he hadn't dropped out, he would have won. But other people feel that Ross Perot's candidacy was very important because it raised issues no one else was addressing, namely the deficit and NAFTA. NAFTA, he didn't succeed, but with the deficit, he got both other candidates who had been ignoring the deficit to focus on the deficit, to debate the deficit, and to agree to reduce the deficit. And indeed, in the Clinton administration, the deficit was reduced. In fact, I think the budget deficit for a while was eliminated, but
He
although
balanced
the
the
debt
budget,
remained,
Clinton did.
and that was all seen as a result of Perot's candidacy. Had he not run, none of that ever would have happened. So there's a case to be made for a third-party candidate running simply to get some issues addressed. Even if the candidate doesn't win, the issues will win. Is there any sense of that with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
When you say sense of that, there's no sense that he's running for president in order to raise awareness. He's running for president to be the president of the United States.
But are there some issues that simply by running, he can force onto the national agenda that have been ignored or suppressed
Sure.
or censored? And what would
yes,
those be?
absolutely. And the national, let's say the media needs to ask those questions of those other candidates. Unfortunately, they don't. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the only candidate talking about, raising issues that neither of the other two candidates are talking about. The one you just mentioned, the national debt. I mean, both between Trump and Biden, they added more to the national debt than every other president in history, going back cumulatively to George Washington. It's $34 trillion now. I think the amount of money that we're spending just servicing the debt is we're spending more money than on our military budget. Our healthcare, we spend $4.3 trillion for healthcare, and the reason why we're spending so much money is because we're such a sick country. When his uncle JFK was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease, a chronic ailment of some sort. 60% of Americans suffer from some form of chronic disease. It's especially a problem with our youth. A pediatrician, if he saw one child with diabetes in his entire career, that was a lot back when JFK was president. Now, 1 out of every 3 children has either diabetes or is pre-diabetic. You know, he's talking about a lot of these issues that, like you said, none of the other candidates are talking about, and they're still not addressing them. Maybe this will be addressed when they're on the debate stage together, but they would rather divide the people and bring up divisive issues to not raise awareness of the problems that are there. So
Let me ask another question, and then Liz can chime in. Foreign policy, you know, they used to say that in America, this is when I was young, the election campaign was to Ireland, Italy, and Israel, uh, and candidates making foreign trips. You know, you might add Mexico now, and maybe Poland. But I know Trump made some foreign trips, and Biden certainly has made a lot of foreign trips. Has Mr. Kennedy made foreign trips now, just as listening trips, not to conduct his own foreign policy or anything that would challenge him, but just to go and meet the leaders and get to know the situation on the ground? Or is he
yeah,
planning any such travel?
that's a great question. I know that he talks quite a bit about how he's met people all over the world. For years he's traveled. I know specifically he knows numerous Israeli leaders he's met with and has spoken with. I'm not privy to the details of specifically who. Um, he has close friends in Israel. He has close friends who are Palestinians. He has a very close friend living in Gaza, who he talks about. You know, right now he's living in southern Gaza in a tent with his 5 children, one of whom was vaccine injured and is very sick. He sends him money. It's you know, he's very aware of the international situation. He speaks quite a bit about the need to end foreign wars. He speaks specifically about the fact of how he would end the war, the unnecessary war in Ukraine, and he gives very specific reasons. There are videos that show this also on YouTube and on his website. I encourage anybody to go to you know, Kennedy24.com. There's dozens of videos that you can see there that are detailed by policy. He speaks very much about the issue of NATO expansion, about the need to draw down our military budget to more realistic levels, how he would do it, why he would do it. So he gets very specific about these things. And I know that, you know, from the time when he was a little boy and traveling with his father, he tells stories about meeting world leaders, like you said, in Poland. He speaks specifically about an experience there. But I don't know how often he's been traveling in the last decade or two. I would imagine he has, but I'm not familiar with his specific travels like that. But he, you know, that's a great question. I'm curious what you think when people go into the voting booth, how much of their determining, is it a determination of who they vote for based on foreign policy issues or the pocketbook? Was it Clinton who said it's the economy stupid?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that was Bill Clinton. You know, what are your
Although
thoughts on that?
he ran on some foreign policy issues himself when he was. I think it's a mix, honestly, for people. I mean, I think it's a mistake because obviously foreign policy affects the economy
Sure.
and vice versa. So and also people always like those photo ops, you know, of the candidate in different. You know, if I'm an Italian American, I want to see Kennedy being blessed by the Pope. You know, I mean, that's the type of thing
Yeah,
that
well,
you'd like.
Kennedy's favorite saint is Saint Francis. He speaks about that all the time. He's a very religious person in a certain sense. He's not necessarily from a an observant perspective, as we I guess Jews, it's more of a definition, but he's a very religious person. And there's a wonderful video of him sitting by the fire talking about his religious beliefs. And again, Saint Francis happens to be his patron saint, I guess you would say.
Yeah. You know what? I have a question.
Yeah.
At times, if you bring up Bobby Kennedy in Jewish circles, some people will raise the fact that he had a friendship with Louis Farrakhan, and I and connected with that. I want to know if do you think Kennedy understands the connection of the war against Israel and the anti-Semitism that's connected to that, and the great insecurity that American Jews are feeling right now, and you know why are there reasons why they should think about Kennedy, that he will address those concerns? Do you think he understands all that?
Um, I believe that he does understand that. What I appreciate about him, and this sometimes gets him in trouble, is someone will ask him a question, and if he's not sure about the answer,
Mhm,
he'll say, I need to, I need to think about that.
mhm.
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah,
A candidate who actually says,
right,
I'd like to think about that a little bit more before I give you the political answer that's most expedient.
right.
I don't recall the specifics of his relationship with Louis Farrakhan. Um, but when he was testifying on in the House hearings on censorship, and he was extremely straightforward about how upset he was about being called anti-Semitic. Uh, it was something that you could tell was coming from from deep inside. Um, his he obviously believes that Israel and Jews and Israel are connected at the hip, that you cannot separate the two. So I'm a bit more familiar with his policies and his belief in the importance of the state of Israel, and that uh, that that we need to be a strong ally for the state of Israel. So that says to me that he also believes that he's a friend of the Jewish community. And again, since October 7th, he's basically been saying the same thing. Even though it's gotten him into some conflict with people who supported him, some have left uh, giving him their support, but that hasn't swayed his belief. That's it's what was his version of a two-state solution isn't Michigan and Ohio.
Oh, right.
He believes very strongly in in the state, in peace for Israelis and for Palestinians, and that's why he's taking the time to meet with Israelis and Palestinians to talk about how we can improve the future towards that.
Glendo, I wasn't aware of this allegation about Farrakhan until Liz raised it.
Yeah,
Although it doesn't surprise me, the Democratic Party, uh, you know, depends on some of Farrakhan's voters and support, I believe. I mean,
You know,
certainly the
he
pictures with
he
Obama and I believe Bobby Kennedy Sr. His security at one point was provided by the Black Panther Party. So uh, the
yeah,
question,
that's
I
right.
guess, would be
yeah,
what is what is that about? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
does Liz have any more information or not?
Yeah.
no, I mean, I've run into it on occasion, like, you know, in Facebook groups or something, and people say, well, he was friends with Farrakhan, or, and honestly, I don't know the details of that myself. I thought Glenn might, but
Mhm.
Well, you might want to find
I
out
know
about that because it's
I
going to
know a
come up.
bit. I know a bit about his, his philosophy, which a lot of it, again, he gets from his uncle, John F. Kennedy, who said, in order to make peace with your adversary, you have to understand your adversary. You have to talk to your adversary. You're never going to make peace if you ignore that.
Mhm.
And so perhaps he had a relationship with Louis Farrakhan because he wanted to understand the situation, where he was coming from. Not necessarily that he would support Farrakhan's views or what he
Right.
said, but just as a way of understanding the reality of the situation. So many people criticize certain people who go to Russia to meet and ask questions of Vladimir Putin. Well, how are you going to make peace and work out agreements to end wars that are taking the lives of 500,000 people if you don't engage with them?
Yes.
He
Well, it
believes very strongly in the need to engage with your adversaries so that when you actually need them in certain other instances to get involved, you have a relationship with them and you have a certain level of trust, even if you disagree.
Well, I mean, I don't think we can settle this now because none of us really know the details. The thing is, this isn't unusual. I remember the Bush campaign against Gore. Um, uh, Dick Cheney, I thought, was almost making anti-Semitic remarks about Lieberman, and Bush was actually endorsed by the Muslim American Public Affairs Council. He was the choice of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. Now, the result was perhaps not what they wanted, but or maybe it was. I don't know. But the fact is, on all sides, politics makes strange bedfellows. But since Liz has heard something, it's probably something given
I mean, I
the
will say,
Democratic Party, and we know that Farrakhan was involved in the Obama administration. What somebody should find out what's going on there and just at least
yes,
know
I
what's
think, I mean, I would want to say this seems to be something that was from the past, either the 80s or the 90s, when there was a lot of anti-Semitic activity on the part of Nation of Islam in New York City and around New York State and New Jersey. So maybe it came out of that. Maybe Kennedy was talking to people then.
I don't know. Glenn will have to find out because
Yeah,
he doesn't know. I
I'll
don't think
research it,
so.
or Glenn can,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but it's
I haven't found
the
it yet.
first I had heard about it.
well, if Liz has heard about it, I assure you, Biden and Trump have heard about it. So it'll come up later when it's most useful. The other thing is, I'm wondering. We've talked a little bit about this. Let's just say, Glenn, and you lived in Israel, right? You made Aliyah, and then you came back. So you actually have children in the Israeli army. Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, I have three children who all served in the IDF. They're 32, 30, and 27. Two of them were officers. My son fought in the Gaza war, Tan in 2014. They all served in the military. Yeah.
So, in other words, this isn't an abstract discussion for you.
Mm,
You want Israel to be safe and secure and at peace because
sure.
your family is there. Um, Kennedy may say a lot, but given that he's a total outsider with no experience in government, he says he's going to unravel the deep state the way Trump didn't because he was a lawyer and sued everybody. But how is he going to be able actually to accomplish his goals given his lack of experience in government?
When you say accomplish his goals, can you be a little bit more specific?
Unraveling the deep state, ending forever wars, making Israel safe and secure in peace with the Palestinians and the neighbors,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
he's going to focus on it, and he's going to get, do as much as he can, having the experience that he has of, uh, I mean, he's sued all of those agencies, and he has sued a lot of the companies that have captured those agencies. He understands the way they work. Um, what I would what I would just recommend, for because that's such a large question, is that people just visit his website and go to each of the policies and see exactly what his positions are and what he would do. Um,
Okay, let me ask you another question. I know you're
yeah.
involved with the Israel issue.
Mhm.
Now, I've looked around, and some names I've seen, as advisors in foreign policy are Jeffrey Sachs or Charles Eisenstein, whose book I got. Who are the top sort of
Mhm.
policy wonks who Mr. Kennedy's consulting about the Middle East, let's say?
I don't know. I know that just from my interaction with the campaign, that Charles Eisenstadt is I would refer to him more as a spiritual advisor. Not in any way. I mean, maybe he's talking to Bobby about Israel. I don't know, but I see him more as a spiritual advisor. He certainly doesn't have any political foreign policy experience that I'm aware of. Jeffrey Sachs, I'm not that aware of the connection, but I have seen some videos where he does talk about him, or they have had some interactions. I honestly don't know who are his advisors in that regard. I think he is somebody who, I mean, he's incredibly well read. So he reads a lot of what people like, for example, Einat Wilf, a former member of Knesset, who he just had, again, I might have mentioned it earlier, he just recorded a podcast last Tuesday, which should be dropping in another week or so.
Oh,
And she
wow.
was one of the participants. So he doesn't necessarily take advice. When he met with Yossi Klein Halevi, and I spoke to Yossi after, actually the first time they spoke on the phone. I made a shidduch, and they actually had a phone call, and I asked Yossi after the call, how was it? And he said he just listened. He did very little talking. He asked me a lot of questions, and he listened. And that to me is a sign of a really good leader, who listens, because people who surround themselves who don't want to listen are surrounded by people who don't want to talk. And he actively engages with people, but he's so focused on listening and getting other people's ideas, other people's perspectives. So I think when he becomes president, that's one of the ways he's going to function, is reaching out, listening to people. That's what he's doing now on his Path to Peace podcast. He's asking Israelis and Palestinians, people like Yossi Klein Halevi, who is one of the biggest warriors of not just peace between Israelis and Palestinians, but Jews and Muslims. I mean, nobody has done more for that, to build those bridges than Yossi. So people like that, he's going to reach out to, get their ideas. How do we make this work? And and use the powers that he has. And as an independent, he has the ability to reach across both of the aisles, because I do believe that whether it's 70, 80% of Congress are generally of the same belief in many issues, especially when it comes to supporting Israel. So I think he has the ability as an independent to build that consensus and not allow every single issue to become a political issue. I mean, issues like the environment, it's not a left-right issue. Everybody wants clean water. Everybody wants clean air. There are so many issues that have become so political that do not need to be political. And I think that's going to be his approach, which is why I think he has a much better chance of being successful than either Biden or Trump.
So let me ask you a question. When you talk to him about Israel and Jewish issues, to what extent does his progressive base go along? Like I just saw this latest item, I think from the Kennedy Beacon, where he welcomes campus protests on the one hand, but he thinks you need to have free and open debate on campus for all sides on the other. And it looks to me like he's trying to thread the needle.
Mm-hmm.
There are probably a lot of progressives who believe Israel is a Zionist, settlerist, colonialist state, which should be eliminated, just because that's what they're taught. But is he looking just for a middle way, or is he going to try and educate people as to the realities of the situation?
Well, he's definitely going to educate people as to the realities of the situation. That's what he does in his writings, in his books, and in what he says. As far as the Kennedy Beacon, I believe that's something that's run by the American Values 24 PAC, which Kennedy has nothing to do with because they're a completely separate
I
organization.
know, but they support him and they're his
Well, yeah,
supporters.
they do. And
You
but
can't
what I'm
distance
saying is
yourself
it's
from
not
it.
his words.
No,
What
they're quoting him. He made a statement. It's in the
Yes,
article.
and what he's saying is it's not but or it's and. He believes very strongly in freedom of speech and that there should be healthy debate on campuses. There clearly is not.
Yeah, but should
And
people dress up in keffiyehs and masks and threaten Jewish students and
well,
block access to
I'm sure
buildings?
if he was asked that
Should
question, he
they
would say
be,
no.
should they, well, I'm just saying these issues, when the rubber meets the road, there are going to have to be some
Hmm.
decisions made. I mean, it looks like he's trying to have it both ways to me, which every politician does. It's normal. But as we get closer, there's going to
Hmm.
be some issues because you'll see he'll have Trump to his right and he'll have Biden to his left. And if you want to capture the center, you have to have that vital center they used to talk about, some, realistic propositions for dealing. I mean, the
Yeah.
rhetoric is fine, but,
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if rhetoric is fine because rhetoric is just words without ideas and conviction. I think that's a
no,
definition of
sometimes rhetoric that's empty rhetoric. Rhetoric is
okay.
just persuasive speech. I mean, you need good rhetoric in order to persuade people, and I think his rhetoric, to me, is very persuasive. But
Yeah.
the issue to me is the hard choices haven't come up yet. I mean, like for instance, Nicole Shanahan. I was there when she was announced, and the people in the room who were Kennedy supporters were very disappointed. They're hoping for Tulsi Gabbard or someone like that,
Hmm.
there may be realistic reasons that he chose her, but
I think
there'll be
that's a great
again as you go
example.
as you that's the first decision made,
Yeah.
and I mean, etc.
I think the reason why I like his pick of for Nicole or his choice of Nicole is she has a very specific task and job to do in the campaign, using her incredible experience and knowledge of technology and AI to specifically deal with the issues of finding out why people are so sick. Um, there's a tremendous amount of data in healthcare. Um, there are lots of studies, but um, these agencies like the NIH, they're not doing the studies to find out what's causing a lot of these chronic illnesses because they are pretty sure that they don't want to know the answer because it's going to point to a lot of these chemicals that are banned, literally banned in Europe, but for some reason our agencies allow food companies and their, big agriculture, as it's called, to put these things in our food. And those are the agencies that provide half the budget for those are the companies that provide half the budget for these agencies. So they're captured by them. And so that's a specific task that to some extent, a job that Nicole Shanahan is going to do. It's interesting. I think she's maybe the first vice presidential candidate, and I haven't talked to her yet, so I don't know if she has political aspirations. But as a young mother, I have a feeling that she doesn't care about becoming president in 8 years. I mean, pretty much every other
Well,
vice
you know, also
presidential
with the
candidate.
Kennedy, there's always the worry that you'll become president. Let's say he won, she might become president sooner, God forbid. So,
Well,
I mean,
of
is
course,
she,
she has to be able
I
to
don't want to argue
handle the
about her because
job.
she's the choice. And like Dan Quayle or Kamala Harris or anybody, Dick Cheney, Mike Pence, whatever, Al Gore,
Mhm.
or Joe Biden for Obama. They're going to be they're the running mate. That's what you're going to do, unless you want an
Absolutely.
Eagleton situation, or I guess Perot replaced his vice president too. They had Swindle, and then they had Admiral Stockdale. But the question is, here's the first decision you make,
Yeah.
and maybe it was a good decision, and we don't realize it fully for reasons we don't know. But the point is, I think when you go from reading and talking and speaking and filing lawsuits to actually making decisions about running things,
Hmm.
we want to see the team. We want to see the personnel. I mean, one of Trump's problems, you said we picked the wrong personnel. How do we know that Kennedy's going to pick the right personnel?
So it's a great question. I guess um, I know that I trust him to make the right decisions, choose the right people. Um, that's really a good a question for him. And when I talk to many of the other supporters of Kennedy, even or especially the ones that disagree with him on certain issues, they still have this incredible trust in him making the right decision, because every decision that he makes, every word that he writes in his books, he takes great pains into studying before he does. It's almost like the way Jordan Peterson speaks. When you watch Jordan Peterson, he's always thinking before he says something, and even after he says it, he's thinking about what he just said. I think it's an example of the Socratic mind that Kennedy has, and I trust him to make those right decisions. That's why we elect an executive as president to make the right decisions. And if we don't have trust in that person, then we shouldn't vote for them.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Liz, any other questions?
No, I think I'm good. It's very interesting to see how things are unfolding, and I think the Jewish community has things to think about. I I know I'm going to keep looking into Kennedy, and
Can I ask you a question, Liz? In your you know experience in the Jewish community, what do you think would be the best way that Kennedy can reach or answer the concerns of the Jewish community in America? What would you have any specific thoughts on that?
wow, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, Jews are, as I said, feeling insecure right now. There's a lot of craziness going on. Um, and I think Biden has been playing a very wily uh, game of, and it's not just Biden, it's other politicians have been doing it. Obama did it too. It's kind of like with the Jewish community, they think, well, all you have to do is tell the Jewish community that, we remember the Holocaust and we've got Israel's back. And all you got to do is tell the Jews that, and you'll get the Jewish vote. And I think Kennedy needs to find ways to convey that he's not just going to glad hand us, that he has specific ideas for, fighting what's going on the campuses, all the DEI stuff, all the lies about Israel, that he takes these issues seriously. I mean, when, part of why I refused to vote for Biden in 2020, I read through Biden's website, and he had these conversations with the or plans for the different minority communities, and what he had to say to the Jewish community. It was just a bunch of glad handing stuff that I just mentioned. Whereas when you read what he was saying to the Arab and Muslim communities, you could tell he had some very specific ideas in mind, and he was going to take action. So everything that's unfolded here through Biden, it did not surprise me one bit. So I think Kennedy needs to talk to the Jewish community and also the non-Jewish community, to get that community to understand why they should care about the political organizing against Jews and against Israel, and how harmful that is to the United States as a whole. All the pandering that's gone on toward Iran. I mean, the Biden and Obama strategy for integrating Iran, it's just crazy. And that is very harmful to all of the United States. It's not just about Israel and the Jews. So I think Kennedy has to find ways to pull all that together, and make a case for why Jews should join him. Hope
Thank
that
you.
answers, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. I'm sure we'll have more on this. As I said, to me, the real thing is the deal hasn't been agreed to with the Jewish community, that they can leave Biden and go to anybody else. I'm afraid, from my experience. So I think to get Jewish support, or more Jewish support, Kennedy needs to do something, and I would agree with Liz, something very, very specific that's different from Biden, and I guess different from Trump. That's a unique, pathway of his own, and I'm sure he'll come up with it. And I'm glad you're working on it already. But I think it'll have to be pretty solid. And I personally, I'm just going to chime in my own opinion. I would like to see him go and visit Israel on a listening tour, and he could go to the Palestinian territories. He can go to Gaza. He can go wherever he wants. Go to Saudi Arabia, Egypt. But I would like to see him take some listening tours, not to make policy, not to make speeches, but just to hear what people have to say, and to show that he's activated on these issues. Because you can read things in books and people can tell you things, but when you're actually there in person, often you get
I'm relatively sure that he has done that extensively. I have not.
Well, then I'd like to know more about it.
Well, yes, absolutely. But I'm relatively sure that he has spent significant time over there, from when his father, his father was first there in 1947 48 as a reporter for the Boston Globe,
right,
covering the war, the announcement of the Declaration of Independence. But I'm relatively sure he spent significant time there.
But he hasn't been there since October 7th.
Not to my knowledge. He's been,
I haven't
his
either,
daily routine here is like you can't imagine.
I understand. But anyway, that would what I would be looking for if it's possible to. I mean, it'd be very dangerous, especially for a Kennedy. But you know, that's the type of thing where you could see what's and of course it might piss off Biden, which would be a good thing too. So that's my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. I want to thank you. How can people find out more? I see there's a on this thing. I gotta sort of get down here.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kennedy24.com.
Kennedy24.com. That's the campaign website. It's you know, it's very well organized by policies. And then for each policy are a series of videos where he talks about those policies or any kind of other things that are written about those policies. It's a very well organized website. The campaign is terrific. His daughter-in-law Amaryllis is his campaign the head of his campaign. She is a brilliant woman, and the people that he has who are making these videos. I don't know if you've seen the recent video that he's now suing Facebook for blocking. It was called "Who is Robert F. Who is Bobby Kennedy?" So whoisbobbykennedy.com. But if you try to, a lot of people who were trying to share it on Facebook, they were being blocked. So I believe the Kennedy is suing Meta, which controls Facebook and Instagram, for that. But yeah, Kennedy24.com is probably the best way.
Is there any way people can get in touch with you directly? Is there a
Sure.
email we can put on the
Yeah,
bottom
a-
when we post this?
absolutely. Glenn with 2 N's at teamkennedy.com.
Okay, so we'll do that because you never know. Somebody might have some ideas or information that could be interesting.
Ideas or
But,
information or questions.
yeah.
I was on the phone last night with a volunteer, someone who's on the campaign out in Santa Barbara, and she had questions about his stance on Israel. We spoke for 2.5 hours on the phone last night, and it was a fascinating conversation. But that's the thing, you know, he's got all these podcasts like the one with Joe Rogan. They sat down and literally spoke for 3 hours. I'm trying to imagine Joe Biden sitting down and speaking to somebody for half an hour, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
He doesn't
And
have to.
well, yeah, but I believe he should. And
Yeah.
he doesn't want to. He can,
Yeah,
he just chooses not to.
yeah. All right. Well, I look forward. I hope we can come back and follow up as this
Sure.
all develops. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. I'm so glad that Liz was here because I was interested to find out. I must say, Liz raised some doubts with me that I didn't have before, but I'm sure that the candidate will be able to answer them by the next. And that's the purpose of these things, to find out what's going on. And I guess I should say, if anybody from the Biden campaign or the Trump campaign wants to be on my interview, I would be happy to do it. You know, I have a feeling I won't get them, but you never know. I mean,
Never know.
it's very interesting because it's it's you know, I think things are very much in flux, and anything can happen. And could Kennedy actually win? I believe it's possible. Trump was not supposed to be able to win, and he won. I remember when Obama was running against Hillary, it wasn't his turn, and he wasn't supposed to win, and he won. And what they had in common, Obama was an outsider, and Trump was an outsider, and Kennedy is very much an outsider. So it may well be that the outsider has the edge if he can get his message out and get the exposure that gets him before the people and overcome the tremendous. And I think the best part about that video, which I did see, "Who is Bobby Kennedy," was the second half about how smear PR campaigns work, and where they're now portraying him as crazy. That was actually in the
Mhm.
PR camp. I
I
mean, they
saw
said
that.
Trump was crazy too, and it's pretty standard. Which is kind of interesting because our president shows signs of actually having dementia. But
They're referring to
no
the playbook. They referred to it as the playbook.
Mhm.
playbook.
Um,
Exactly.
but you know, we're in a very different times. People are getting a lot of their information from podcasts that never happened before. 52% of the American voters are independents now. 2004, that number was about 30%. You know, things are very different. So when I hear people say, well, look at what happened with Ross Perot, there's never Gary Johnson, there's never been a third party candidate who was able to do it. We're in uncharted waters, and I think the number is 70% of the American voter wants to vote for somebody else.
Yeah,
We've
that's the
never
thing.
had this situation. It's almost like a perfect storm.
Well,
Yeah,
also, people want a fresh face. In other words, President Trump had his chance, and he may have meant well, but he couldn't do the job he said he was going to do. Uh, Biden's had his 4 years. We see the results. People, you know, anytime you go to the store, I just had somebody say to me, can you believe the Triscuits and how few Triscuits there are in the Triscuit box now, with this shrinkflation, and people can see the results. So it's like, let's give someone else a chance. And if, Mr. Kennedy doesn't work out, we can elect somebody else in 4 years. In other words, you don't have to have the same, the definition of insanity is well, I can't remember what
Well,
it is, but it's
repeating the
doing the
same
over
thing
and
and
over.
expecting a different outcome.
exactly. So why don't we try something different and expect a different outcome? I think that's one way, whereas Bill Clinton said, time for a change. That was a winning campaign slogan for him. All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
Glenn. It's a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Liz.
Thank
And
thank
I'll
you.
stop the recording now, but we'll talk a little bit after.
Okay.